Hi, my name is Sam Dillon and I'm from San Jose, California, and this is homework number 3 for Loudon Stern's Intro to Music Production class from Berklee School of Music given through Coursera. And I'm going to talk today about the signal flow through my DAW, which is Cubase 7. Here's a little project that I just tossed together with a few example tracks in it and things like that that we're going to use. And this is the project window, so let's flip over to the mix window. Okay, this is the Cubase 7 mixer screen, and it, as you can see, it's been fairly significantly revamped since the 6.0 version, but basically it's the same stuff that was there before. It's just presented a little bit differently. And as you can see, when you first pop it open, it doesn't look like a heck of a lot, but that's because each one of these horizontal bars across the top here represents a section of the mixer that's sort of been folded up to get it out of the way so that you can pop open just one or a few or all of them if you want at a time to focus on what it is you need to do at the time, and you won't have a lot of extra clutter if you don't need it. In general, as mentioned in the class, the signal flow in the DAW, or on a real mixing board for that matter, is generally top to bottom with some exceptions, and I'll try to point those out as we go through it. First, I'll go over each one of these sections. First off, you've got routing, and that's where you control the inputs and outputs of each channel that we're looking at here, followed by an inserts section where you would basically put your inserts, although for the most part they're virtual inserts at this point, but that's where they drop in. After that, you've got an equalizer section, which is kind of a standard piece in Cubase, and we'll look at that. It's fairly complex, and we'll look at that in a second. And then this piece here is called the strip, and that is it represents an equipment rack that each channel would have in a real mixing board. And we'll pop that open because it's fairly complex, and it's also fairly interesting as well, but we'll take that peek at that in a minute. And then finally you get to the sends, and after the sends, that's where you peel off a copy of the signal to send to some other track or whatever, wherever you want to send it, to the control room, to the monitor, you want the headphones, whatever it is. And then finally you get to the actual final fader itself, the master fader for that particular channel. So let's pop these open and take a quick look there. Routing, just like you would expect, you can select your input here. In this case, it's the right half of a stereo input on my audio interface, and you can pop it open and pick whatever you like. And here we're mapped on the output to the master stereo out. And this is one of the exceptions that we mentioned. This, if you're really following the signal flow, this is the last thing that happens after the fader down there. This is where the signal finally goes after all the processing that we're going to talk about. Inserts come next, and we've just for now I tossed a few in here just to give us something to look at here. It's a guitar, so here's an amp simulator, a reverb, and another one. I forgot what this one does, and if you want to manipulate the parameters here, you just double click on it, and as you can see there, you've got your amp simulator, and you can fiddle around with it. And then same thing with the reverb, you just pop it open, do whatever you feel like doing, change your wet dry mix and all that, and there you go. Let's close this guy up, and after that is the EQ section, and as you can see, that's a fair bit bigger. And what you've got here is 4 different equalizers in series here, and you can pick what type each one is. You know, there's parametric, high shelf, low pass, so on and so forth. There's all kinds of different ones in here, and then these are sort of little quick controls that you can use to manipulate the sound. And if you look up here, there's a little window that actually you can see what you're doing, the cuts and the boosts that you're putting into the signal. Okay. And you can do that. You can set up different types, so one after the other, to end up tweaking the sound exactly the way you want it to be tweaked to. Okay, now I'm gonna and you can do it up here too, actually. So you can fiddle with these little cue points and all that, but that's for another video. Now down here, the strip. That's what I was saying was the sort of the equipment strip, where all of the pieces that we would find on a real board will be found. And this comes up in a default layout of like 5 different possible bits of processing for your audio signal. It comes into a noise gate, and then it goes into a compressor, and then this here refers to that equalizer that we just looked at, its position in the signal flow. And then you've got what they call an input transformer. Essentially, it would usually be like an envelope shaper or something, so we could add one in here, and here we've got one. And then there's a tape saturation section if you want to use some tape saturation. You know, it's a simulator to make it sound like an old-fashioned tape machine. It has kind of a nice warmth, just a little bit of saturation and distortion in there. You can use that if you want. And finally, a limiter. And there's several different types, so you can have a limiter in here if you want to. Let's put in a brick wall limiter or whatever. There it is, so you can set the threshold and all that. So these are the pieces that you would find in a vertical channel strip on a real DAW, or I mean on a real mixing board. Now what you can do is you can actually grab these. If you don't like the order, you can drag them and drop them, and in particular that's why we've got this EQ position here. It doesn't pop open or anything, but what you can do is grab it and drag it up to the top and put it, say, before the compressor if you wanted to, or maybe after the input transformer but before the tape saturation or something like that. Okay, and let's close this guy up because as you can see it gets pretty crowded. And then finally the sends, and this is again very similar to the input routing. This is some more additional output routing. We've got, right now I just set it up with a couple of things that we could look at here. Here's a group bus like you would use for maybe for drums or whatever it is, a brass section or something. Doesn't really matter. It's just a group bus. Here's an FX bus where maybe we've put a reverb for the overall mix or something like that. Okay, and these can be either pre or post fader. They default to post fader, but you can move them to pre just by selecting that like that, and off you go. And there's a little corner thing there that indicates this is now pre fader. And I've run out of time. I've run way over, in fact, so I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next week.